A government steps up to a podium and calmly announces it will borrow another $1 trillion. Not million, not billion, a trillion. The number flashes across screens. Commentators argue, politicians shout, markets yawn, and then life goes on. No sirens, no shutdowns, no visible consequences. And yet, buried inside that quiet announcement is a question almost nobody asks out loud. When governments borrow trillions of dollars, who actually benefits? Not who is supposed to benefit, not who politicians say will benefit, but who in real life quietly gets paid. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Governments do not borrow from some giant piggy bank labeled the people. They borrow from a system that most citizens never see, never vote on, and rarely understand. A system so large and normalized that it barely feels real anymore. And right now, that system is running hotter than at any point in modern history. This matters now because government debt is no longer a distant problem. It is not something future generations might deal with someday. It is the present tense. The United States alone adds roughly $1 trillion of new debt every few months. Other major economies are not far behind. Japan, Europe, emerging markets, all borrowing, all rolling over old promises with new ones. And yet daily life feels strangely normal. Gas stations are open, grocery stores are stocked, phones still buzz, nothing feels like an emergency. Which raises a dangerous question. If borrowing trillions is so harmless, why does it matter at all? To understand that, we have to strip this system down to its bones. No jargon, no textbooks, just the actual flow of money. Let's start with something deceptively simple. When a government needs money, it sells promises. Those promises are called bonds. A bond is just an IOU with better branding. The government says, lend me money today and I'll pay you back later plus interest. That interest is the reward, the incentive, the price of trust. On the surface, it sounds boring, safe, almost dull. But here's the part most people miss. Governments do not sell these IOUs to regular people first. They sell them to a small group of powerful buyers. Banks, investment funds, pension funds, insurance companies, and sometimes central banks themselves. Think of this group as the front row, the first stop, the only ones invited into the room when trillions are on the table. These institutions show up with massive pools of cash and buy government bonds in bulk. In return, they receive guaranteed promises backed by the state, promises that pay steady interest, promises that are treated as some of the safest assets on earth. That cash then flows to the government. It pays for roads, wars, healthcare, bailouts, salaries, everything. So who gets paid first? Not citizens, not voters. The institutions with enough money and access to buy government debt at scale. But that's only the first layer. Now let's follow the money one step deeper.
Those banks and funds did not magically create that cash. Much of it comes from deposits, your savings account, your retirement fund, your insurance premiums, your pension contributions. Millions of small streams of money pooled together into something enormous. You were not directly lending to the government. You never sign the bond. You never see the paperwork. But your money is often part of the pile. And the institutions in the middle take a cut. They earn interest on the bonds. They earn fees for buying and selling them. They use those bonds as collateral to borrow even more money, one promise stacked on top of another. And this is where the system quietly turns strange, because government bonds are not just investments, they are fuel. Banks use them to secure short-term loans. Funds use them to leverage bigger bets. Central banks accept them as pristine collateral. Entire financial markets orbit around these promises. So when a government borrows trillions, it is not just raising money, it is feeding the machinery of modern finance. And that machinery has learned to depend on constant borrowing. Here's the irony. Governments are often described as drowning in debt, but the financial system is starving without it. Pension funds need bonds to meet future obligations. Banks need them to satisfy regulations. Central banks need them to steer interest rates. Traders need them to price risk. Debt isn't a side effect, it's the raw material. Now pause for a moment and think about what that means. If borrowing stopped tomorrow, it wouldn't just slow governments down, it would jam the financial system itself. That's why markets barely blink when another trillion is announced. Borrowing is not shocking anymore, it's expected. But expectation doesn't mean harmless. Let's talk about the uncomfortable math. When governments borrow, they promise to pay interest. That interest is paid every year, decade after decade, even when the original spending is long gone. A bridge lasts 50 years, a war ends, a bailout fades from memory, but the interest keeps flowing. Who receives that interest? Bondholders. The institutions that own government debt collect steady payments funded by taxes, inflation, or more borrowing. This creates a quiet transfer of money from the broad economy to the holders of financial assets, from workers to balance sheets. And here's where things get awkward. The more debt exists, the more interest must be paid. The more interest paid, the more pressure on budgets. The more pressure on budgets, the more borrowing becomes necessary. A loop. Not a conspiracy, not a secret meeting, just math and incentives. Now zoom out. Governments often justify borrowing by saying it helps everyone. Infrastructure, jobs, stability, growth. Sometimes that's true, but the benefits of borrowing are immediate and visible. The costs are delayed and abstract. Higher prices instead of direct taxes, lower purchasing power instead of a bill, future budget cuts instead of today's pain. Inflation becomes the silent partner. When money supply expands faster than real production, prices rise, not overnight, not evenly, but steadily. Who feels inflation first? People living paycheck to paycheck, people with cash savings, people without assets that rise in value. Who is insulated? Those who own bonds, stocks, real estate, those with pricing power, those close to the financial system. So while governments borrow to smooth crises, the long-term effect quietly reshapes who gains and who loses. And here's the quiet humor in all of this. Governments are often portrayed as reckless spenders borrowing from the future, but in practice, they are reliable customers. They rarely default. They can tax, they can print, they can inflate. From the perspective of large institutions, government debt is one of the safest games in town. That's why demand remains strong even when debt levels explode. But safety for whom? For the system? Yes. For asset holders? Often yes. For everyone else? It depends. Because as debt grows, choices narrow. Budgets become interest-heavy. Flexibility shrinks. Policy options tighten. Eventually, governments face uncomfortable trade-offs. Raise taxes, cut services, allow higher inflation, or borrow even more. Each choice shifts pressure somewhere else. And here's the part that rarely makes headlines. There is no clean exit. Debt is rolled over, not repaid. Old bonds are replaced with new ones. Promises are extended. Timelines are pushed forward. Future growth is expected to carry the weight. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. History is full of moments when confidence cracked, when inflation surged, when currencies weakened, when political pressure exploded. Not because borrowing began, but because it became too easy for too long. And yet, from the inside, the system feels stable, professional, controlled. Interest rates move, auctions clear, payments flow, until they don't. So who really benefits when governments borrow trillions? In the short term, governments gain flexibility, institutions gain safe returns, financial systems gain fuel. In the long term, the benefits tilt towards those closest to money creation and asset ownership. Not because of malice, because of structure, because the system was built to reward those who can deploy capital at scale, which leaves the rest of society carrying diffuse costs that are harder to see, harder to measure, and harder to protest. And that brings us to the question no one likes to answer. If borrowing trillions is normal, if markets expect it, if institutions depend on it, what happens when trust finally wavers? Not collapses, just wavers. Because in a system built entirely on promises, confidence is the real currency. And once people start questioning who truly benefits, the answers stop being comfortable. They start being dangerous.